Thank you all for your support. If you enjoy this podcast summary, please consider subscribing. Mike Dowd, a former New York police officer, has been dubbed New York's dirtiest cop. He's been open about his past corruption, and it's clear that the label still stings. Dowd's crimes were numerous, and he estimates that he committed thousands of them during his time on the force. He robbed people, took bribes, and even sold drugs that he had confiscated from dealers. Dowd's corruption was so rampant that he's not even sure how many crimes he committed. Dowd's story is a shocking example of how corruption can take hold in even the most trusted institutions. It's a reminder that the incentives and culture of an organization can have a profound impact on the behavior of its members. In Dowd's case, the incentives were all wrong, and he was able to take advantage of the system to enrich himself. However, his story also serves as a warning about the dangers of corruption and the importance of holding those in power accountable. Dowd's corruption eventually escalated to the point where he was dealing drugs and taking money from drug dealers. He became a market maker in the drug trade, taking money and drugs from crime scenes and selling them to his connections in the drug trade. Dowd's corruption was not limited to his work as a police officer. His wife knew about his corruption, but she never said anything. In fact, she would often tell him to stop, but he couldn't. He was too deep in the game, and he couldn't get out. Dowd's corruption eventually caught up with him, and he received death threats from a lieutenant who had been involved in a dispute with him. The lieutenant had been involved in a drug house, and Dowd had reported him to internal affairs. The lieutenant retaliated by making threatening phone calls to Dowd's house, but Dowd was not intimidated. He knew that he had the upper hand, and he was not afraid to use it. Despite the risks, Dowd continued to work as a corrupt police officer. He knew that he was taking a chance, but he couldn't resist the temptation of easy money and power. He was a master of manipulation, and he knew how to use his position to get what he wanted. As a former police officer, he was involved in some shady dealings, including taking bribes from drug dealers and selling cocaine. But it all shifted to unravel when he met a guy named Baron Perez, who owned a car shop that was a front for a cocaine operation. They offered him $8,000 a week to protect them, and he took it. But things took a turn when Dowd met Adam Diaz, a bigger player in the drug game. Diaz was making $1 million a week and selling $50 worth of cocaine a year. Dowd asked for $24,000 just to talk to him, and Diaz agreed. Despite the risks, Dowd continued to work with Diaz and even saved him from a robbery once. But the guilt was eating away at him, especially after a cop was killed by associates of La Compa. Dowd felt responsible, and it was taking a toll on his mental health. He shifted drinking and taking drugs, and his marriage was falling apart. But when he came out, he was shunned by his fellow officers, who thought he was working as an informant. Dowd tried to resign and retire on disability, but it was too late. He was eventually arrested and charged with corruption. Looking back, Dowd realizes that he was part of the problem, not the solution. He became the environment he was living in, and it consumed him. As he says, you become God. Like you get the God complex. Like you feel indestructible, but you see yourself decline. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of corruption and the importance of staying true to oneself. He's a former corrupt police officer who was arrested and sentenced to 14 years in prison for conspiracy to distribute narcotics. But despite the challenges he's faced, Mike remains an optimist, always looking for the diamond in the pile of shit. He believes that every day is a new opportunity to start again and make a change for the better. Mike's story follows with his arrest on May 5th, 1992, the day after the Rodney King riots. He had been working with his partner, Kenny Yorrell, who was involved in a cocaine business. Mike had made a deal with Kenny to get him a couple of packages of cocaine, but unbeknownst to Mike, Kenny's phones were tapped, and he was the target of an investigation. When Mike arrived at the station house, he was met by two internal affairs officers who took him in for a drug test. Mike was relieved when he was arrested, feeling like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. He had been living a double life, lying to his wife, family, and colleagues, and the anxiety and fear of being caught had been eating away at him. After his arrest, Mike was released on bail, which was paid for by his family. He began to make plans to escape the U.S. and start a new life in Nicaragua. But things took a turn for the worse when he got involved in a scheme to kidnap a woman who owed a drug organization $500,000. Mike was arrested again, and this time he was angry and frustrated. Mike was eventually convicted of racketeering and conspiracy to distribute narcotics and served 12 years and 5 months in prison. When he was sentenced, he was devastated, feeling like his life was over. However, he soon realized that he had to survive and make the best of his situation. Mike was fortunate to have a relatively easy time in prison, thanks to his connections with Dominican drug gangs. However, he still had to deal with the challenges of being a cop in prison and the stigma that came with it. Throughout his journey, Mike has learned the importance of honesty and living an authentic life. He believes that it's easier to tell the truth and accept the consequences than to live a life of lies and deception. Mike's story is a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity and find redemption. Despite the mistakes he's made, Mike remains a hopeful and optimistic person, always looking for the diamond in the pile of shit. Mike's family, particularly his mother, Carol, was shocked and angry when they found out about his arrest. They'd always thought of him as an honest and reliable person, and it was hard for them to come to terms with what he had done. However, they stood by him throughout his ordeal and supported him as he navigated the challenges of prison life. Today, Mike is a changed person, and he's grateful for the lessons he's learned. He believes that everyone has the power to change and start again, no matter what mistakes they've made in the past. Mike's story is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to make a change and start living an authentic life. He spent 13 years in prison for his crimes as a corrupt police officer, but it was his relationship with his parents that ultimately changed him. His mother, in particular, had a profound impact on him. She went to church every day for 12 years, praying for her son, and her love and devotion eventually broke through to Mike. Mike's journey began when he was a young police officer, eager to make a name for himself. He quickly became embroiled in corruption, taking bribes and selling drugs. He admits to committing hundreds of crimes, but later said it was probably more like thousands. His corruption was so deep-seated that he even admitted to having both police and main learning from video. Dowd's corruption was fueled by the lack of accountability and the culture of corruption within the police department. He estimates that he committed thousands of crimes during his time on the force, including taking bribes, selling drugs, and robbing people. Dowd's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of corruption and the importance of staying true to oneself. He believes that corruption still exists in law enforcement today and emphasizes the need for reform and accountability. Dowd's journey serves as a reminder that it's never too late to make a change and start living an authentic life. He has become an advocate for police reform and speaks out against corruption, hoping to bring about positive change. The key takeaway from Dowd's story is the importance of holding those in power accountable and creating a culture of integrity and ethics within institutions. By sharing his story, Dowd hopes to encourage others to speak out against corruption and work towards creating a more just and equitable society. If you are interested to listen to complete 40-minute summary and unlock detailed insights for each topic discussed in the video, check out Quick Podcast Summaries on Spotify and Apple Podcasts with free trial and later just for the price of candy. Whoa! Happy listening.